All right. Hey guys. Thanks for joining our first Vantage Ventures Real Talk. We're super excited to be chatting with you and getting to share these events, which previously we were holding in our event space in Morgantown. We're really excited to have these and be able to now get them out to even more people. You're getting to see some pieces of our homes as we talk with you and the point of these Real Talks is to chat with some really exceptional entrepreneurs and West Virginians to learn a bit more about them, about what it takes to keep things going, and to dive into what their path looked like and some of their stories. So today we're going to chat with Greg, and super excited for that. Hey, Greg.
Hey Kelsey, how are you?
Good. Thanks so much for joining us today. You're in our inaugural Real Talk. It's super exciting. We're excited to have you, and I just wanted to kick off and maybe let people know how we met. Um, I had just moved to Morgantown and was meeting everyone in the entrepreneur community. I'm also an avid outdoors person myself, and immediately heard that Greg was who I needed to meet. We've had fast forward through several hiking meetings and exchanging exciting information about all the upcoming climbing in the area and whitewater rafting and things like that. But it quickly became really clear that he was a total entrepreneur as well. And if you're kind of new to Vantage out there or you haven't talked with us yet, we're obsessed with entrepreneurs. We're all about helping them out, building up an entrepreneurial community here in West Virginia. And Greg's story is one full of optimism and passion, and he's really been able to make a lot of his visions a reality. So we're really excited to have him, and thanks for joining us, Greg.
Thanks, Kelsey. So I am working from home with two little kids, a 4-year-old and a 10-year-old. So they may come running through the background, which could keep it really exciting. As my wife and I are both working full time and trying to balance the work-life business right now, given the situation we're all in.
Totally. Wouldn't have it any other way. Um, and I think that if you don't mind just letting us know kind of your role right now with West Virginia University and where you find yourself.
Yeah, so I'm the Assistant Vice President of the Outdoor Economic Development Collaborative out of the Provost Office. So I've been at the university over 15 years. And so right now I'm spending my time working on economic development, thinking through how does the state leverage its outdoor recreational resources to attract young people to the state and businesses along with that. I think we have a huge opportunity to leverage those assets through quality of life to attract businesses.
Yeah, and that's kind of a lot of what brought us together in the first place. I remember some amazing presentations you gave regarding kind of West Virginia's livability and some of the amazing trends there. And I definitely want to talk to you a little bit about that in a few minutes. But I've also heard amazing things about some programs you really kind of were able to dream up and see come to fruition. Adventure West Virginia is one of them. Certainly the Science Adventure School is another. And so would you mind telling us a little bit about those programs?
Yeah, so the Science Adventure School, well, let me start with Adventure West Virginia. So when I came back to school, I was non-traditionally, I was a little bit older, and came back to WVU to study recreation once I realized that was the direction I wanted my life to go. And so I started looking at all of these outdoor orientation programs across the country. I think the current number is around 225 colleges. And back then, it was in 2003 when I was working on my graduate degree, and I identified 8 schools coming to West Virginia. And we didn't have a program. They're coming to West Virginia because of our outdoor resources. Fast forward to today, it is the largest outdoor orientation program in the country. We subsidize the program for the incoming freshmen. Every dollar WVU invests in the program returns $10.60 because it's so impactful that it impacts students' 6-year graduation rates by 6.53% to be exact, because they create a sense of belongingness and community. So we took the outdoor orientation program, we have an outdoor ed center, we do trips around the world, as well as all over West Virginia, and then we created the Science Adventure School. And so how do we take that same philosophy of helping people within that transition period and creating community and learning and push that down to the 6th grade? And so we're in partnership with the Summit Bechtel Reserve, which is an amazing facility in West Virginia, and leveraging that facility and the partnership there to impact the school kids in West Virginia. With our goal in that program is every 6th grader in West Virginia have an opportunity to spend a week at the Science Adventure School.
Wow, that's amazing. So why 6th grade?
Well, what we found in doing our research, we looked at all the different science and STEM kind of camps out there that are residential, and felt like 6th grade was kind of the right age that they could take the science a little bit deeper. You didn't have some of the problems that you may get co-ed staying together in tents, even though we're not doing co-ed in tents, but some of the issues that they had with older grades. But 6th grade seemed to be the sweet spot that most of the states and most of the national programs were doing. And then this light bulb went off and said, wow, most schools in West Virginia, 6th grade is also a transition from elementary school to middle school. Well, let's focus. We've seen this great impact on the transition from high school to college. How can we impact students when they're going to go into 6th grade? Because that's really a key point where they start to, are they interested in STEM? Are they not? How do we build their confidence as they build these new communities in middle school?
Amazing. So what are some, talking about kind of incorporating outdoors and interest in STEM, what are kind of some examples of things that, some of these 6th graders might be doing in this program?
Yeah, so the Summit Bechtel Reserve is amazing. We are so lucky as a state to have that in West Virginia. It's a $500 million camp. It is the ultimate camp in the country, in the world. It has 1.5 times the bandwidth as the entire city of Charleston on the camp. It has the largest outdoor climbing wall, the most amazing mountain bike trails, 4 beautiful lakes that can camp 40,000 people. So, for example, the largest outdoor climbing wall in the world, we go rock climbing with the 6th graders. But before we go rock climbing, we teach them the science behind rock climbing. For instance, the belay device, the automatic belay device they use, uses magnetic eddies. Well, what is a magnetic eddy? And we talk about that. There's no friction associated with it. We talk about muscles. They learn about the difference between static and dynamic ropes, all these science principles. And then they go up to this climbing wall and they get to go climbing. And we're all about a supportive environment. So all their new friends, their teachers are cheering them on as they're climbing and trying to get them to set goals. And then after they step away from the climbing wall in a small group, we sit down and say, well, how is climbing similar to school? Well, I may slip up a little bit and I need someone to give me advice on how I get through. Well, I need to set realistic goals. I can't just jump in and expect to ace these really hard classes. I need to where is my sweet spot and what resources do I need? And then lastly, so after they process that experience, which is Kolb's experiential learning cycle, we talk about the sense of place. Did they know that people come from around the world to climb at the New River Gorge, which is their backyard, and talk about why it's unique to live in West Virginia and really try to raise their pride in their home.
That's amazing. A few things come to mind. One is that I think we kind of as entrepreneurs could all use the similar exercise around some of the lessons climbing has to teach us. But, I'm struck by, and I think you and I both got to have conversations. We've gotten to talk with some amazing different tech companies from Silicon Valley with and a lot of folks in the engineering world, and their real interest in young engineers that are getting super into climbing and kind of the growth of that industry and real interest from, adult folks in STEM who are really finding it to be an activity that kind of pulls on all the similar brain ties and having that teamwork aspect as well.
Yeah. rock climbing is growing across the United States. It was supposed to be in the Olympics this coming summer. It will be hopefully next year in 2021. And there was an article on November 13th in New York Times that said that engineers specifically are really drawn to rock climbing because it's a three-dimensional puzzle, and tech workers are also really drawn to it.
Nice. And so it sounds like you've just in that kind of accomplished a ton in terms of getting an entire state involved in some of these different programs that can have huge waves as they grow up. But from what I know of your background, and I'd love for you to tell us more, you didn't necessarily always know this is what you wanted to do. Do you mind taking us through kind of your journey? You said you were kind of non-traditional and when you started college, and just talk to us about your career path and what has that looked like?
Mm-hmm. I grew up actually in Taylor County in Grafton, West Virginia, and I had a strong connection to the outdoors. I grew up hunting and fishing and riding my bike through the woods, but I didn't really travel. I never had been really, I went on 2 trips outside of West Virginia as a kid that I can remember. And I was studying at Fairmont State marketing and management, and went on a $700 2.5-month cross-country road trip where I went to 23 national parks and drove 13,000 miles in a old used car, and came back and just was a different person. And I went to a friend's house, and he had an Outside magazine, and it said the 50 greatest hikes in 50 states. And I looked up West Virginia's, and it had North Fork Mountain Trail, and I'd never really done outdoor recreation in West Virginia other than hunting and fishing. So a friend of mine went and did that, and I just was like, how could something so beautiful be in my backyard and I didn't know about it? And how come I didn't hear people talking about these outdoor resources sitting around us? And I remember up on North Fork Mountain looking down on Seneca Rocks, and it was really small, and just really had this light bulb moment, and I need to discover my backyard and discover West Virginia. And that ended up being an important transitional point for me. So while I was studying marketing management at Fairmont, I was missing the passion piece. I worked at Walmart for 6 years as I was paying my way through school. I was actually taking out bank loans and paying on them while I was in school. I didn't know to file for FAFSA and just some of those things. On my father's side, I was first generation college student. And so I ended up my last semester there, while I was taking 15 hours, I ended up teaching 9 credit hours of outdoor recreation classes because I had all this outdoor experience from traveling cross country. And while we were climbing on the gymnasium in the Fairmont State Gym, I got a student up to the top, and it was no climbing wall. It was just climbing up the bleachers, and then we were rappelling down. And he said, "This is the best class I had ever taken." And I'm thinking, well, I really enjoy teaching this. And then that spring break, I ended up taking 20 students out to the Grand Canyon, went to White Sands, New Mexico, Chiricahua National Monument in Arizona, and then we backpacked the Grand Canyon. It cost each student $125. And they got 3 credit hours, and I got the president of Fairmont State then to pay for it. And I organized that, and it taught me, wow, I can do something and make a difference. And it was an amazing experience for those students and for me, and kind of set my path on showing people the beauty of the outdoors and being in nature.
Yeah. I mean, Greg, I'm literally picturing you. So you were in the gymnasium inside at Fairmont State teaching students to rappel off of bleachers.
Yep, climb up.
So, okay, I'm comparing that to now kind of the glorious rock wall that exists indoors at WVU, as well as then, like you mentioned, the outdoor at the Summit Bechdel Reserve. And I'm thinking it's quite an accomplishment.
Yeah.
Talk about before and after photos.
Yeah. So after I actually, I worked at Walmart for 6 years, and my best friend was the best man at my wedding. He was my climbing partner. He and I made glow-in-the-dark climbing holds, and we sold enough to pay for a rock climbing trip to Yosemite Valley. Kind of climbed across from El Cap, if you've seen Free Solo, the other side of the valley. And that winter, I went ice climbing for the first time and had to come up with, I had a class and I had to come up with an idea to teach something. So I wanted to make this artificial climbing hold that you could place an ice axe into. And one of the instructors of the class had climbed it down and he said, you need to come up with something you can swing your ice axe into and you'll make millions. And so I went back to my apartment. I remember laying in my bed and thinking about, okay, what could I swing an ice axe into to simulate rock climbing? And thought about my days working at Walmart and thought about archery targets. So I researched what they were made out of, got some samples, mounted them to wall, tested the different densities, and then sold that to a company in Oregon, Entreprise, which is the largest manufacturer of climbing walls in the world. Now, I didn't get rich off of it. I made thousands of dollars, not tens of thousands. But what it taught me is that a kid from a small town in West Virginia can take a crazy idea and get it to market. And so the top ice climbers in the world have climbed on it. It's at every trade show so that you can demonstrate the new ice axe that's out. They're in retail shops. There's a large facility in Washington State that uses it to train people before they climb Mount Rainier.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I mean, and that's what it's about, right? It's solving for those problems that maybe not everyone realizes are out there. So that's great, and I think so reminiscent of what a lot of West Virginians have found too, just that kind of innate skill of being resourceful and finding a way to kind of create what they're looking for. Now, I would love if you don't mind talking now about some of the things that looking forward you're thinking about. You've done so much, helping get that Adventure West Virginia program up and running for so many incoming students and, reaching the sixth graders in the state, helping to build that interest in STEM and sense of community and place. Kind of in your mind, right? What's next? What are some of the things you're looking forward to?
I see so much opportunity for the state through outdoor recreation. Over the last few years, there's more data out there on the size of the outdoor economy, what is the value, and there are more people. Two of the fastest growing states in the United States are Colorado and Utah, and they're moving there for this outdoor economy. And one of the articles that really stood out to me was when they interviewed the 50 fastest growing tech businesses on why are they in Salt Lake City area. They're calling it the Silicon Slope. The number one reason why they located their business there was to attract young people because they could steal talent from Silicon Valley because of quality of life, because of skiing and rock climbing. And the second reason was because the owners of the companies want to live in a place for quality of life. There is this shift with younger people about around the quality of life. What can you do in your backyard? And I think West Virginia can really capitalize on that, especially in the East Coast, to be an outdoor mecca.
Yeah, awesome. So I'm getting some questions coming in from the live feed that I'd love to bring in too. It looks like kind of one of the first ones is, could you speak a little bit more to your findings about how important nature can be in getting it involved with school and in children's development?
Well, I mean, you think about traditional classroom, kids are sitting down in the classroom, they're sitting there, and there are some kids that are meant to move around and they squiggle and they wiggle and they're all over the place. And when they come outside and they're learning, the kids who struggle in that classroom setting come alive. And the teachers will say that, like, oh, look at this kid's really grasping it. They're getting it where they might have more struggles in the classroom, and connecting them to the nature and making the science real and engaging them is really important. It can change the lives. We have a video that you can share on this after the post, that you can just watch the kids, just the energy level pick up.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll put it in the comments. And speaking to kind of all these ideas you're generating, and it sounds like, you're kind of a constant machine of what could be next and how can we keep making things better. Where do you feel like you get some of your best ideas or inspiration?
I think it's the problem solving aspect. So for instance, I talked about the ice climbing wall. So how do I, nobody's created something that you could swing an ice axe into and simulate rock climbing. So I took my knowledge and then kind of researched what was out there to come up with an idea. And so right now I'm working on one around remote workers. What's happening in places like Tulsa, Tulsa Remote, had 100 spots funded by the Kaiser Foundation to get remote workers moving to their state. They had 10,000 applications and they had to turn it off. That's real economic value to an area because those people now are buying food, buying houses, operating there, and that's out of state money. Right now, 25 to 30% of workers nationwide are remote workers. They expect that to be 50% of them after the COVID-19, after this all ends. So think about a problem that West Virginia has is we're losing youth. We're losing a population faster than any other state. So here's a problem. Could that be a potential solution for our economy and leverage the outdoors to show people what does it really mean to live here? And so taking a problem, thinking about what other people are doing, but make it uniquely solving West Virginia.
Yeah, absolutely. And what do you, so in that idea of kind of more remote workers and really kind of using this to West Virginia's strengths and some of the strengths of the region, can you paint me a picture of what something might look like? What maybe if it's around Morgantown or there's a bunch of places in the state that really would lend themselves, like what does that look like? What does the town look like? What does that feel like? What's your vision there?
Well, I think, one of the things our office is doing is asset mapping. So where do we stand compared to other towns? For example, within an hour and a half drive of Morgantown, if you take every whitewater put in, you can get on American Whitewater, there's 605 miles of whitewater. Within a 10-mile radius of Morgantown, there's 500 routes. If you take Beckley, the center of downtown Beckley, within an hour and a half, they can get to 820 miles of whitewater. And within an hour drive, 3,000 climbing routes, world-class climbing. Give you an example, Boulder, Colorado has 130 miles of whitewater in an hour and a half. Boise, Idaho, 97. So our assets are better than these outdoor towns out west. Now their skiing there's no comparison, their skiing compared to ours, but whitewater, there's no comparison compared to us. And there's a lot of whitewater kayakers. So what I envision is how do we tell our story better so that folks realize that, wow, you can leave your house in downtown Morgantown at 12 o'clock and you can be home for dinner at 5 o'clock and run a run like the Big Sandy or the Upper Yak in that time frame. And that's it, you're back to work. You can do it after work. You could do it after school. And then I think a lot of people will move here because of that.
Totally. And I think that's, you hit on such a critical piece that we see over and over again about needing to tell this story in kind of an honest way and really seeing all the opportunity that lies in it. How do you, certainly there are kind of plenty of people who have gotten used to this, more downtrodden story about West Virginia. But, I know that from my experience and from the community around me and certainly in talking to you, we're a community of people who absolutely kind of are very resourceful and can kind of make obstacles opportunities. And how do you, and I think certainly our current scenario of, all being maybe stuck at home apart, which is not what we're used to as West Virginians, not getting together as much. But how do you try and get yourself personally into a mindset of seeing, obstacles or maybe stories that haven't been told the right way as an opportunity, or where do you see opportunity there?
So I'm an optimist at heart. So I'm always like, okay, I can do this. We can do this. I see so much opportunity for a state that struggles in so many different ways, but in the outdoor community is so respected. The kayakers know about it. They have no idea the actual volume of whitewater that we have, and also how much we're water rich. It's actually raining today quite a bit. So I want to get that story out, and I know that they respect it, but we haven't told our story the right way in the national market. I will tell you there's a lot of good work that's been done under this administration, under Chelsea Ruby with tourism. So I see so much optimism for our state, and then thinking, okay, everybody's working home right now with this, and the CEOs of these tech companies are talking about they're expecting 50% of their workers to want to work remotely after this is done, because they're doing it right now and they're able to show they're able to be productive. And there's less overhead with these companies to use Zoom or Skype or any of that. So they don't have to pay for the electricity for those people to, work in an office building, long as they can be productive. So there's this huge wave that's going to come out in the next half a year or a year, who knows how long it's going to take for us to get out of this thing, that we may be able to be ready to really attract those people to live here. And I'll tell you, I feel very blessed and lucky to live in West Virginia right now with on the East Coast. Like, we're not on top of each other. We have space to roam and get outside. I went on a 6-mile bike ride yesterday and I saw 2 people, and that isn't the case in most places.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll ask you, I'll leave a couple more minutes in case any questions do come in. But in the interim, as for those of us that are in West Virginia and getting to kind of make the most of this time to maybe get outdoors a little more, spend some time exploring at a super safe distance from others, what would be your top recommendation for a must-see or a place or two to go, maybe hiking or overlooks to check out or something like that in the state?
Oh, I think it's the Potomac Highlands. The Thomas and Davis have something really special all the way down through Seneca Rocks and Cranberry. Snowshoe is amazing in the summertime when there's so much heat and humidity. In the south, it's 70 degrees and very low humidity, even the height of summer in July and August. And then the New River Gorge area. I mean, that section of the state is so rich and so beautiful. So if you've never stood on top of Spruce Knob, the highest point in the state, that's something folks need to get out and see.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks so much, Greg, for taking some time to talk with us about this. My takeaway is that optimistic problem solvers make very good entrepreneurs and are plenty. And so really appreciate you sharing with us today. And we'll be sure to put the link to that video in the comments. And, folks can feel free to comment on this later. We'll keep an eye out. Any last words from you, Greg?
No, thank you so much. Stay safe out there.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Bye.
Thanks.